I never thought I'd sit down and tell my story like this. You know, when you've been married for over 2 decades, you believe you've seen it all. You think the storms that destroy other families will pass by yours. You tell yourself that loyalty, history, and shared years will protect you from the kind of heartbreak you hear about in gossip or on the evening news. For 25 years, I believed I was one of the lucky ones. My wife, Diane, and I built what I thought was a steady, strong life together. We met young. I was in my late 20s, she was in her early 20s, and she had this warmth about her, the kind of kindness that made people lean in closer when she spoke. She wasn't flashy, not the kind of woman who needed the spotlight. Instead, she was steady, dependable, the sort of person who made everyone around her feel at ease. We married in a little church in town, surrounded by family, friends, and dreams we couldn't yet measure. Over the years, we raised 2 kids together. We bought a house, built careers, and eventually watched our children start families of their own. Sundays became family days. Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas mornings, summer barbecues, those were the cornerstones of my life. When I looked at Diane, especially in those days, I saw not just my wife, but my partner, my safe place, my home. She wasn't just the woman I loved, she was the woman I trusted above anyone else in this world. And that's what makes what happened later so hard to explain. Because when you love someone for that long, when you trust someone with every fiber of your being, the cracks, when they first appear, don't look like cracks at all. They look like shadows, like tricks of the light. You doubt yourself before you ever doubt them. It started slowly. Subtle changes, the sort you could explain away if you wanted to. And for a long time, I did exactly that. Diane had never cared much for technology. For most of our marriage, she was the type who left her phone on the counter, sometimes for days without charging it. If she needed to call the kids or text a friend, she'd do it, but otherwise, she didn't live through that little screen the way younger people do. But somewhere along the line, I can't even pinpoint the exact moment, that changed. She started keeping her phone with her all the time. At first, I told myself it was harmless. After all, everyone these days seems glued to their devices. But the way she guarded it, that was different. When it buzzed, she'd grab it before I could even glance at the screen. She'd angle the display away from me, shield it with her hand, sometimes even leave the room to take a call. When I asked who it was, she'd smile faintly and say, "Oh, just a friend." And here's the thing, for years, that answer would have been enough for me. But something in her tone, the way her eyes darted, told me she wasn't being entirely honest. Still, I swallowed the unease. I didn't want to be the jealous husband, the kind who reads too much into everything. I wanted to believe her. Another thing, Diane started dressing differently. She'd always taken care of herself, of course. A woman with her sense of pride and presence doesn't just let go of appearance entirely. But there was a shift. She bought new clothes, dresses I hadn't seen before, more makeup than she usually wore. She started styling her hair before girls' nights out. Now, don't misunderstand me, a woman has every right to do those things for herself. And maybe that's all it was. Maybe she just wanted to feel attractive again. But when those little changes happen alongside other little changes, you start to notice. And once you notice, you can't unsee it. She started going out more often. Dinner with the girls, she'd say. A movie night, you wouldn't enjoy it. Or a quick trip into the city, don't wait up. I wanted to believe. I really did. But the details didn't always line up. There was one night, in particular, that still sits with me. She came home late, close to midnight, wearing a new perfume I couldn't quite place. I asked her how her evening was. She smiled, a little too brightly, and said, "Fine. We just grabbed dinner and talked." But later that night, when I checked Facebook, something I rarely did, I noticed she had posted a picture. A group photo, supposedly from that evening. Only she wasn't in the photo. Her friends were there, laughing, holding wine glasses. But no Diane. When I asked her about it the next morning, she said, "Oh, I must have stepped out when someone snapped the picture." And maybe that was true. But the unease grew inside me like a slow, creeping vine. Now, let me talk about Facebook for a moment. Diane used to tease me for being the one in the family who spent more time online. I liked keeping up with old high school buddies, reading local news, checking in on the grandkids' photos. She always said, "You and your Facebook, I don't see the appeal." But suddenly, it became her world. She was posting every day, selfies, inspirational quotes, pictures of her meals, even check-ins at restaurants I'd never heard her mention. At first, I thought maybe she was just catching up with the times. Many women in her circle had discovered social media later in life, and it gave them a sense of community. So I told myself not to make a big deal of it. But then, I started noticing the comments. Always from the same man. Not over the top, not obvious enough for anyone else to blink twice. But enough to make me pause. "You always brighten my day. No one else has that kind of smile. Wish I could have been there." Harmless words on their own. But together, strung across weeks of posts, they told a different story. I asked Diane about him one evening. She barely looked up from her phone when she said, "Oh, just an old family friend. You don't know him." And that was it. End of conversation. She didn't elaborate, didn't explain. Something about that clipped answer gnawed at me. This is the part where I need to admit something. I wasn't perfect. Over the years, I got comfortable. Maybe too comfortable. I stopped noticing little things, when she bought a new dress, when she cooked a special meal, when she tried to strike up conversations I brushed off with tired answers. Sometimes I wonder if I had been more attentive, more present, if things would have turned out differently. Maybe she wouldn't have sought attention elsewhere. Maybe I wouldn't be here, telling you this story. But then again, no one deserves betrayal. Not after decades of loyalty. Not after building a life together. And so, the doubt grew. Quietly, silently, eating at me. I remember lying awake at night, listening to her breathing beside me, wondering what she was dreaming about. Wondering if her heart was already elsewhere. I told myself I was being paranoid. That after so many years together, it was natural for some distance to appear. But then, just when I'd convinced myself everything was fine, another little clue would surface. A receipt in her purse from a restaurant 2 towns over. A lipstick in a shade I'd never seen her wear. A missed call from a number saved only as initials. They say when you start looking for something, you'll find it everywhere. And that's what happened to me. The more I noticed, the more impossible it became to ignore. But still, I said nothing. I carried it all inside. Because confronting the truth felt like opening a door I wasn't ready to walk through. And so, I let her live her life. I let the doubts gnaw at me, night after night, all while trying to smile at family gatherings, laugh at barbecues, and play the part of the devoted husband everyone thought I was. But in my heart, the foundation was already cracking. And I had no idea how close I was to watching it all collapse. You know, for a long time, I told myself that everything I'd been noticing, the phone, the nights out, the Facebook posts, was just me being insecure. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was just a man growing older, afraid of losing the woman he'd built his life with. But deep down, I knew the truth. The signs were there. And once you start seeing them, you can't unsee them. They stare you down in the middle of the night, they whisper in your ear during the quiet hours of the morning. It wasn't just the phone anymore. It wasn't just the Facebook comments. It was everything. The little sighs she'd let slip when she thought I wasn't listening. The way she'd rush upstairs to change clothes the second she got home, like she was shedding one skin for another. The way she avoided my eyes when I asked simple questions about her day. And here's the cruel part, in public, everything looked perfect. We still went to church together on Sundays. We still smiled for pictures with the grandkids. At barbecues with neighbors, she laughed at my jokes, rested her hand lightly on my arm, played the part of the devoted wife. But I knew it was a mask. A mask that she wore so well that sometimes, even I almost believed it. I remember one evening, a neighborhood gathering at the Johnsons' house. Everyone was drinking wine, catching up, sharing stories about kids and grandkids. Diane was glowing that night. She always had a way of being the center of attention without trying. People gravitated toward her warmth. But then one of the neighbors, an older woman who never could resist stirring the pot, leaned over to me and said quietly, "Your wife is such a busy woman these days. Always out and about. I don't know how you keep up with her." She said it with a chuckle, but there was an edge to her words. I smiled politely, brushed it off, but inside, my stomach tightened. That night, when we got home, I asked Diane what the neighbor meant. She shrugged, barely looking at me, and said, "Oh, she's just nosy. Don't listen to her." And just like that, the conversation was over. But the doubt stayed. Over time, Diane became different at home too. Not just distant, but sharper, harsher. If I asked her what she wanted for dinner, she'd snap, "I don't know, figure it out." If I suggested we watch one of our favorite shows together, she'd roll her eyes and say, "I'm too tired." The intimacy between us, and I don't just mean physical intimacy, was fading. She didn't laugh with me the way she used to. She didn't share her thoughts, her dreams, her worries. It was like she had built a wall around herself, and I was on the outside, knocking, begging to be let in. And still, I kept silent. Because the alternative, facing the truth, saying the words out loud, felt unbearable. Sometimes, to make sense of it all, I'd sit alone in the evenings and think back to when we were younger. I'd picture Diane in our first little apartment, barefoot in the kitchen, singing softly to herself as she cooked dinner. I'd remember the way she looked on our wedding day, nervous and radiant, clutching my hand as if she never wanted to let go. I'd hold on to those memories like lifelines, convincing myself that the woman I loved was still in there somewhere, hidden beneath whatever was happening now. But the harder I clung to the past, the more the present slipped away from me. One night, I finally worked up the courage to ask her directly. We were sitting in the living room. The TV was on, but neither of us was really watching it. She was scrolling through her phone, her face lit up by the glow of the screen. I turned to her and said, as calmly as I could, "Diane, is there someone else?" For a moment, she froze. Just a split second. But I noticed. Then she laughed, not a real laugh, more like a forced one, and said, "Tom, don't be ridiculous. You've been reading too many of those silly stories online." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But something in her eyes betrayed her words. And that was the moment I realized, the woman sitting next to me wasn't the same woman I had married all those years ago. After that night, I promised myself I wouldn't bring it up again. If she was living some kind of double life, if she had secrets she wasn't ready to share, then maybe it was better not to know. We had children. We had grandchildren. We had a reputation in our community. And I couldn't bear the thought of destroying it all with accusations I couldn't even prove. So I kept playing my part. The loyal husband. The doting grandfather. The man with the perfect marriage. But every smile felt heavier. Every laugh felt forced. And deep down, I knew the facade was cracking. I just didn't realize how quickly it was about to collapse. I'll never forget that morning. It was a Tuesday. Funny how the most ordinary days have a way of becoming the turning points in our lives. The kind of days you'd normally forget if not for one single moment that changes everything. The house was quiet. Diane was still upstairs, sleeping. I had gotten up early, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. It was just another routine morning, the smell of fresh coffee, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint sound of birds outside. I opened Facebook without really thinking about it. Just habit, you know. A way to pass the time, see what the kids were up to, maybe check in on some old friends. And that's when I saw it. It was just one post. Just one picture. But in that instant, my entire world shifted. There she was, Diane. My wife of 25 years. Standing close to another man, his arm wrapped tightly around her waist. Not in a friendly, casual way. Not like an old buddy catching up. No, this was different. Intimate. Familiar. And her face, I can't even describe it. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. A light in her eyes that hadn't been there with me for a long time. The caption read, "To the woman who makes me believe in love again." My hands went cold. I just sat there, staring at the screen, my coffee forgotten. I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. I refreshed the page. The picture was still there. The caption was still there. Within minutes, the likes and comments started pouring in. People congratulating them, heart emojis, little jokes. And with every new notification, it felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. I wanted to slam the laptop shut. I wanted to pretend I hadn't seen it. But there it was, in black and white, in pixels and words. The truth I'd been running from, staring me straight in the face. Her double life wasn't a suspicion anymore. It wasn't whispers in the back of my mind. It was real. And now, it was public. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen. Time seemed to stop. My ears rang, my heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my chest. And then I heard footsteps upstairs. Diane, waking up. A part of me wanted to close the laptop, hide the evidence, pretend nothing had happened. But another part of me, the part that had been carrying doubts for months, maybe years, wanted her to see what I had seen. Her phone started buzzing on the nightstand before she even made it down the stairs. More notifications. More tags. Her secret was spreading faster than wildfire. When she finally walked into the kitchen, she looked at me first, sitting there pale, hands trembling, and then she looked at the laptop. Her face went white. We didn't need words. In that silence, everything was said. Her eyes filled with panic, with shame, with something that looked almost like anger. She grabbed her phone, scrolling through the screen as if she could somehow undo what had already been unleashed into the world. "Tom," she whispered. "I can explain." But we both knew there was no explanation that could erase that picture. No excuse that could take back that caption. No lie that could make the truth disappear. Our life, the life we had carefully built, the image we had so carefully maintained, had just been shattered by one Facebook post. The hours that followed felt like living inside a storm. The phone rang non-stop. Our grown children called, voices filled with anger, confusion, betrayal. Friends messaged me, some out of sympathy, some out of curiosity. Neighbors started whispering, I knew they were, even before I stepped outside. And through it all, Diane sat in the living room, her phone in her hands, tears streaming down her face. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to demand answers. But instead, I just sat there, numb. Because the truth was louder than any words she could say. Eventually, she confessed. Not all at once. At first, it was little pieces. We reconnected online. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. I didn't mean to hurt you. But as the hours dragged on, the pieces became the full picture. She had been seeing him for over 2 years. It started as messages, then dinners, then weekends away disguised as girls' trips. And the worst part? She admitted she loved him. Loved him. Hearing those words felt like being punched in the stomach. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat alone in the dark, staring at the walls of a house that suddenly felt like a stranger's home. Every photo on the wall, every piece of furniture, every memory seemed tainted. How could everything I thought I knew turn out to be a lie? How could the woman I trusted with my entire heart build a second life right under my nose? And how cruel was it that the truth didn't come out in a private conversation, behind closed doors, but in front of the entire world with one careless post? By the next morning, nothing was the same. Our children wouldn't answer her calls. The church we'd attended for decades was already buzzing with gossip. And Diane, the woman who had always been so careful to protect her image, to guard her secrets, was suddenly exposed in the most public, humiliating way possible. Her double life was over. And in its place, we were left with nothing but wreckage. I wish I could tell you that once the truth was out, everything became clear, neat, and orderly. But reality is messier than that. Reality is long nights staring at the ceiling, wondering how you got here. Reality is friends who don't call anymore, or call too often with pity in their voices. Reality is silence at the dinner table, broken only by the clink of silverware that used to accompany laughter. After that Facebook post, our lives became a storm. It wasn't just me who knew anymore, it was everyone. The community, our friends, even strangers who barely knew us but loved a good scandal. The whispers were constant. At the grocery store, at church, at work. People lowered their voices when I walked by, but their eyes screamed judgment. And she, my wife, walked with her head high, as if she could defy the weight of it all, as if pretending it didn't matter would make it true. But I knew. I knew everything had changed. At first, I thought I'd leave. That seemed like the natural response, didn't it? She'd lived this double life, and now it was laid bare for the whole world. What more reason did I need? But it wasn't that simple. We had history. We had decades together. We had children, grown now, but still looking at us as the anchor of stability in a shaky world. What message would it send them if I just walked away? And, maybe the harder truth, I wasn't ready to be alone. You don't spend 30 years with someone and just erase it with a single revelation. So, I stayed. At least for a while. The conversations between us turned bitter. She accused me of humiliating her. Said I should have confronted her privately, not allowed it to become public fodder. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity. She was the one who put her secrets out there, not me. She was the one careless enough, or arrogant enough, to let her other life bleed into the one we shared. But I didn't laugh. I didn't yell, either. I was too tired for that. I asked her simple questions: why? How long? What did I do, or not do, that pushed you there? And she gave me answers, but none that satisfied. Some were excuses. I felt unseen. I felt like life was passing me by. I wanted to feel young again. Others were justifications. It didn't mean I didn't love you. It wasn't about replacing you, it was about finding myself. Do you know how hollow that sounds to a man who has given his entire adult life to someone? Who worked extra hours so she could stay home with the kids, who fixed the roof in the rain, who held her mother's hand at the hospital when she couldn't bring herself to do it. Finding herself. She was supposed to find herself with me. The weeks dragged on. Our friends chose sides. Some avoided us altogether, too uncomfortable to pick. Others texted me words of support, quiet sympathy, while still inviting her to brunch. People like to have it both ways, I suppose. Our children, that was the hardest part. My daughter called me first. She'd seen the Facebook post before I could prepare her. She was angry, not at her mother, not at me, but at the situation. "Why couldn't you keep this private?" she asked. "Now everyone knows our business." As if I had wanted it out there. My son was quieter. He didn't ask questions. He didn't say much at all. But when he came over for dinner, I noticed how he avoided looking at his mother, how his conversations with her were clipped, polite but distant. I hated it. I hated that her choices had fractured not just us, but the family we had built. There were nights I sat on the porch, staring into the dark, nursing a glass of bourbon, and wondering what life would look like if I left. Could I start over at my age? Could I find companionship again, or would I spend the rest of my days alone, haunted by the memory of betrayal? I thought about old friends who had divorced late in life. Some seemed happier, free, even. Others seemed adrift, lonely souls trying to fill a void that nothing quite satisfied. Where would I fall? And then I thought about forgiveness. Was it possible? Could I look past the lies, the secrets, the double life? Could I believe in her again, trust her again? The truth is, I didn't know. She tried, in her way. She cooked my favorite meals, left notes on the counter like she used to. She even suggested counseling, something she would have scoffed at in the past. But every gesture felt like a performance. Every smile felt rehearsed. Every word carried the weight of what had been exposed. And then there was the online world. Even after deleting that post, the internet has a way of keeping things alive. Screenshots circulated. Anonymous comments appeared under her photos. Some cruel, others mocking. She pretended not to see them, but I could tell. I could see the way her hand trembled when she scrolled through her phone. I could hear the sharpness in her tone when someone mentioned social media at all. Her double life wasn't just exposed, it was immortalized. One night, weeks after everything had blown up, I found her sitting in the living room, lights off, staring at her phone. She looked smaller somehow. Deflated. "I ruined us, didn't I?" she whispered. And for the first time, I saw not the woman who betrayed me, not the woman who had spun lies with ease, but the woman I married all those years ago. Vulnerable. Afraid. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't know if we can fix this." Silence stretched between us. The kind of silence that isn't empty, but heavy. The fallout wasn't just between us, it was inside me. Some days, I wanted to fight for us. Other days, I wanted to pack a bag and never look back. I found myself replaying our life together like an old film reel. The good moments, the bad, the in-between. I wondered how many of those moments were real, and how many were shadows of the life she was hiding. Was our wedding day as pure as I remembered, or had she already been the kind of person who could live a lie? Was that trip to the mountains a shared joy, or just a vacation between secret messages and plans I didn't know about? How do you separate memory from reality once you know someone is capable of deception? The fallout wasn't loud. It wasn't screaming matches or broken plates. It was quiet. Subtle. It was two people sitting at the same table, living in two different worlds. It was going to bed side by side, but miles apart. It was realizing that trust, once broken, doesn't shatter like glass, it dissolves like sand, slowly, until you can't hold it anymore. And that's where we were. Two people who once built a life together, now standing in the ruins of it, unsure if we should rebuild or walk away. That's the thing about double lives. They don't just end when they're exposed. The consequences linger. The fallout spreads, touching every corner of your existence. And the hardest part? Sometimes, even when the truth is out, you're left with more questions than answers. I never imagined that the end of my marriage, the end of the illusion I had lived in for more than 2 decades, would be sealed not with shouting, not with a slammed door, not even with a legal paper slipped across a polished wooden desk, but with a single post on Facebook. It was a Tuesday evening. I remember it clearly because I had just come back from the grocery store. I was unpacking bags, setting down the bread and fruit, when my phone buzzed. A notification. I wasn't expecting anything. I don't use social media the way she did. But curiosity got me. I opened the app. And there it was. A picture. Not from her account, she had been careful about that, but from someone else's. One of her friends, if you can call them that. It was a casual photo from a party I didn't even know she had attended. She wasn't supposed to be there. She was supposed to be with her sister that night. That's what she told me. But in the photo, she wasn't with her sister. She wasn't alone. She was with him. His arm was around her waist. Her smile, not the polite kind you give for a photo, but the kind you can't fake. The kind I thought was reserved for me. And the caption? Love looks good on these two perfect couple. I froze. Do you know that feeling when the floor drops out beneath you? When you realize the truth you've been avoiding is suddenly undeniable. That was it. Right there. In one careless Facebook post, her carefully built double life collapsed. I didn't comment. I didn't call her right away. I just sat there. My hands trembling, the phone heavy like a brick in my palm. I wanted to deny it again, to find some excuse, but there was no wiggle room left. Not this time. The days that followed were a blur. When she came home that night, I didn't say anything. I watched her move around the kitchen, humming, pretending. I looked at her differently now, not as my wife, but as a stranger wearing her skin. Finally, I confronted her. I showed her the post. I watched the color drain from her face. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She tried to explain, God, she tried. Said it was just a misunderstanding. Said the photo was innocent. Said people like to stir drama. But you don't put your arm around someone's wife like that. You don't smile like that. You don't caption it perfect couple. And she knew it. That was the night the lies ended. The fallout was brutal. Our children, grown, with lives of their own, looked at their mother with confusion and disappointment. Family who once admired her now whispered behind her back. Friends chose sides. Most chose mine. And me? I felt both shattered and strangely relieved. Because when you live for years with doubt, suspicion, and little cracks in the foundation, the truth, even if it's ugly, is at least solid ground. I filed for divorce. Quietly, without theatrics. She begged, pleaded, promised. But I had seen the truth, and you cannot unsee it. It's been months since that Facebook post. Sometimes I wonder if she ever regrets it, not the affair, but the sloppiness. The carelessness. Did she ever think her secret world could unravel so easily? She built a double life brick by brick, lie by lie, hiding in plain sight. And yet, it only took one careless friend, one photo, one caption to bring it all down. Now, when I log onto Facebook, I don't look for her. I don't look for pain. I look for pictures of my kids, updates from old friends, reminders that life goes on. Because it does. And as for her, her double life may have been thrilling for a while, but in the end, it was her undoing. One post. That's all it took. And so, I ask you, if you were me, standing there with that phone in your hand, staring at undeniable proof that the person you loved most had been living a lie, what would you have done?